Dentin is harder in its central part than near the pulp or its periphery. In this area, dentin is harder in its central part more than its periphery or near the pulp. The lower content of mineral salts in dentin render it more radiolucent than enamel. When we take an X-ray to the tooth, you will see enamel more opaque than dentin. More opaque mean whiter. To understand this concept, this is the X-ray film before being subjected to X-ray, and this is the X-ray source. If the film exposed to X-ray source, it will turn black. So it is white converted by X-ray to black. So if you put an object here between the X-ray film and the X-ray source before applying the X-rays, this object will mask the X-ray from film in amount depending on its internal composition or its nature. For example, if we put 3 different objects here, each one will resemble itself on the X-ray film according to its nature. Each object will mask amount of X-ray depending on its nature and internal composition. For example, the metallic ball here will mask almost all the X-ray, so it will appear in the film pure white. Also, the bone will mask almost all the X-ray except small amount, so it will appear white but less whiter than the metallic ball. But in case of meat, it will not mask X-ray, so it will appear black or almost black. So in this image we can say that the metallic ball is the most radio-opaque object in this example, and the bone is radio-opaque but less radio-opaque than metal, and the meat is radiolucent structure. So in this image we can say that enamel is more radio-opaque than dentin because enamel has more mineral content than dentin. So when we compare, dentin is more radiolucent than enamel but more radio-opaque than the bone. This is the bone. As we can see, dentin is more radio-opaque than bone but more radiolucent than enamel. Since dentin begin to form slightly before enamel, it determines the shape of the cusp and ridge and roots. As you can see in this animation, it starts to form slightly before enamel. So it determines the shape of the cusp and ridges and the shape and number of roots, as you can see. So it is responsible for tooth form. Physically and chemically, the dentin closely resemble bone. Bone is a calcified structure in the body that behaves physically and in its structure chemically close to dentin. With bone, they considered vital tissue because they containing a living protoplasm. As you can see in this image, it contains living osteocyte inside the bone. This is a calcified structure containing a living cell inside it. The same idea in dentin. Dentin contain something called process of odontoblast. This is the odontoblast and this is its process. So dentin contain inside its calcified structure a process of a living cell. So it contains a living organism inside its calcified matrix. This is the odontoblast. Here will be the bulb, and this is enamel, and this is the dentin. So dentin contains within its tubules the process of odontoblast. We will speak about tubules, which this process extending through. So dentin contains a living protoplasm inside its calcified structure. But the main morphological difference between bone and dentin is that bone contains the osteocyte embedded within its calcified matrix. The osteocyte itself surrounded by the calcified structure of the bone. But in the case of dentin, just the odontoblastic process embedded inside the dentin, not the odontoblast itself. Okay, just its process. So the definition of dentin is hard connective tissue. It's hard, remember this image, it's hard tissue. This is a crack, so it's hard tissue forming the bulk of the tooth. As you can see in this image, almost all the tooth composed of dentin and small area of enamel hair and cementum we cannot see here because it's a very thin layer. So the main component of tooth is dentin, being covered by enamel on the crown and cementum on the root. As you can see in this image, this is the crowns of, this is single rooted tooth and this is multi-rooted tooth. This is cementum covering the dentin of the root and this is enamel covering the dentin of the crown. By the way, when you Google the definition of dentin, you will see many differences, but this one is the most famous one.